I think politics as a person I'm very passionate about. I could definitely see myself running for a higher position like later in
No,
life.
oh my God,
100%.
no, 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 Bridge. I would not.
Bridge, I see that for you. I totally see
I'm
that for you.
very
No, no.
And wait,
That's the other
and
thing. I would never let any of you enter
hold on.
politics. The dirtiest business on earth. No
Okay.
one in this family is going to enter politics over my dead body. It is a dirty, filthy business. People get killed all the time. Hello, namaste. Zarna Garg here with the Zarna Garg Family Podcast. So excited to get right into it. This topic is going to make you angry. This topic is going to get your blood boiling and get your blood pressure rising. But don't worry, there are a lot of Indian doctors out there who can help you wherever you are on earth. And the most exciting part is that all five Gargs are in the house. Let's get right into it. My husband of 25 years, Shalabh Garg, Wall Street veteran. My daughter, who's a senior in college, Zoya Garg, my son who's a freshman in college, Bridge Garg, and my little one, my middle schooler, Veer Garg. We're all in the house and we are going to talk about something that is going to get us ripped to shreds in the public eyes. But because we serve our audience first and foremost, we are going to talk about politics and corruption. Politics and corruption, it is in the news in India, it is in the news in America, it is in the news everywhere. What do we know about how corrupt politics is, how corrupt politicians operate, how big government agencies have millions and millions of dollars and seem to get nothing done? What is the view? What does a young generation think of a government agency? Do you trust Social Security? Do you trust that the Department of Education is doing the right thing? I want to hear from you guys and I want to hear from Shalab. So, Shalab, what is your view on Doge?
I don't know who Doge is. Can you tell me who is Doge?
Wait,
Doge
we're
isn't a
talking about
person?
Dogecoin, right?
Okay, Doge, can I explain Doge? I think I know Doge the best. Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh, I see.
Brand
The Elon
new-
Musk department. Yes.
Yes, it is a brand new branch or committee of government that not a lot of people are clued in on, and Elon Musk as well as Vivek Ramaswamy are leading the charge. And
Vivek is no longer part of it, by the way.
Vivek is not part
He's
of it.
no.
Yeah.
Was he not a part of it?
Initially, he was.
Used to
He's
be.
going to run for governor of
He
Ohio.
wants to stand for governor.
Okay,
of Ohio.
anyways, but I do think it's important to bring him up in this context because he did that whole Twitter post on meritocracy and his whole value really does align with what Doge is standing for. Doge is hired software engineers who are from the ages of 19 to 24 who are essentially going to work with Elon Musk to make the government more efficient. I think the premise of it is really interesting. I also think narratively, they've done a very good job of catering to what Americans really want to hear, right? Like it is kind of insane that until fairly recently, there hasn't been that much transparency about how tax dollars are being spent, right? Like now we're seeing all these reports on documentation that just say explicitly where millions of dollars are being allocated and in ways that many citizens don't agree with. So I think what they're doing by actually making these documents transparent is really effective, but I do question whether or not they're being honest about the documentation itself and the methods they're using to like actually make them transparent to begin with, right? Like I question the motivations and incentives here, but if factually it is true and they're, right, then I'm glad that.
Also, I just wanted to say corruption is more a politics problem in India. In America, as you know, that's not much of an issue.
What are you talking about?
I mean, we have a very upstanding political system.
No, there's nothing upstanding about anything. Wherever there is power and money, there is corruption. That's just what it is.
I mean, we have a billionaire
So
president.
do you believe, Mom?
Yeah.
Do you fully believe that with like politics and government, it's all just a business?
100%. 100%. In sports and anything where there's power and money, there is corruption. I don't know what your dad thinks that like somehow everything is pristine and clean in America. It's not even true.
Do you think that do you think that United States presidents in history, a majority of the reason they wanted to be president was for power or like some sort of alternative than trying to make America the greatest place possible?
100%.
Yeah.
You're driven by power. That is
But
the
that's not a bad thing, Bridge.
I disagree. Just to be like,
you can be driven by power and still be a patriot.
Wait, so Baya, you think that
Both
they
things
all
can
they all
coexist.
ran for president because you think that they wanted to make America better?
I think every single president in U.S. history wanted to become president to make America the best place they thought it could be.
I mean, yes, there is an element of patriotism. I'm not saying that there's nothing there, but it's just also a particular type of person who chases that type of power and is willing to pay whatever price they have to pay to get that power. I mean,
Mm,
it comes at a heavy, heavy, big price that
mm.
to even run, even if you don't win, to run, your family is ripped to shreds. They go through everything, and you're like you have to be willing to do all of that for that
I
shot.
so agree with that. Mom, I actually so agree with that. Like I think one thing Mom and I were talking about even yesterday is like we had the opportunity to go to this big award show in Hollywood, which was like such an event, and there were all these people there, and every person who was there was working.
Yeah.
Like they were all working. And
Yes.
like and I think it's really easy, and especially as somebody who is a software engineer myself, like I do the computer stuff. I do sit in my room and like do the math, right? Like I think it's easy when you are one of those people to look at these like events or these presidential candidate bids and think like, wow, like, they're just doing it for themselves. Like, because you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But what's going on behind the scenes is like that presidential candidate has been in glam for like 3 hours, is like literally carrying like outfits that are so heavy that like you literally at the end of the day just collapse out of exhaustion. They've been speaking and holding up this front for all these different people, for all these different camera angles, for getting all these sound bites in that their publicist has asked them to get in, right? Like I'm not saying that one version of work is better or worse than the other, but the nature of work is different, and I think acknowledging that is so important. So like when you're thinking about somebody like Donald Trump, he has been willing to put his whole self in the world since like very long ago, but like he's putting his granddaughter at risk, right? Like we're seeing his granddaughter speak, and he's willing to do that because that was what was required for him to win this candidacy. Like that's a big, I can't say that most people I know would be willing to do that. I'm not saying that that's like the right thing to do, but like that's a big risk that he's being willing to take, and a lot of work that went into thinking through how to do that in probably a safe manner.
But can I ask you guys one question, and then Bridge, I want to get back to your point. Bridge, Veer, and Zoya, do you, when you think of politics and politician, do you immediately think corruption, or do you not make that association?
I
I don't
think
make that association at all.
You don't, Bridge.
I don't think corruption. I think in some situations I might ponder how it could benefit because you obviously have to weigh like things. For example, a president can pardon someone, which might benefit his term in the future, or might benefit his political standing and how much the public loves them. But so you have to evaluate that, but I don't think it's on a basis of corruption, right? Even if presidents were to do stuff, I mean, they do obviously. While presidents do stuff to make themselves look better, increase their approval ratings, and give themselves an opportunity to run again, that is also in very much similar to them making America a better place. They're not going to be able to make America the best place possible if America hates them. They're not going to have the Congress support. They're not going to have Supreme support. They're going to be in a standing where they basically can't do anything because of checks and balances, as it should be, because that's how it should work. If the people hate the president should be able to dictate over the people, right? So it is in some ways, yes, of course, for example, Trump pardoning like January 6th people, most people disagree with that because they stormed the government, they stormed the Capitol. But at the same time, he needed to do that to help his own base feel secure in him and then be able to push further agendas. Not saying whether you agree with agendas or whether you agree with something. That is just a fact of something he felt he needed to do to give himself a better shot at being able to make more actions in the future, which I think
So
people get lost
you
in
don't
that.
see it. You don't see that as a decision, that like as a corrupt-minded decision. You think it's more strategic.
It's strategic, and it's not even strategic. I might even go as far to say it's a good decision. Not that particular moment, that example I gave previously, but just presidents in general doing stuff that makes themselves look better is a good decision. That is a good thing for the
Yeah.
public
I
Wait,
think
to
that's
be able
right.
to.
I
I
mean,
actually
think about
agree.
this,
I
right?
actually
George
agree,
W.
Bridge.
One second, sir. George W. invaded Iraq without any proof of weapons of mass destruction. But how is the world any worse off by not having Saddam Hussein in the world? It's only better off as a result
Oh,
of it, right?
Shala
But you
Bridge.
don't think,
That's a much. Oh my God.
that him pardoning them will make the world not like him, like freezing his decision making abilities?
It wasn't be so much him doing the act of pardoning them, but more so the act of him telling everyone that he's going to pardon them and then following through upon that act and pardoning them. That is the real like core of the thing that he did.
My
For
point is, I
example,
would rather have a decisive president then a president just hangs around on television, you know? So it's good that we have someone who's making decisions.
Wait, I actually also I want to return back to Bridget's point about making themselves look good. Like the president's job is to be a representative of the values that we hope to embody as American citizens. He is the leader of the country. And I think this is like a double-edged coin because there are so many things about, for example, President Trump that I like am really scared about what values he's emboldening in like the young men of America or in even just the way that we approach what democracy looks like. What I will say though is like I do think just anecdotally, I feel a lot more comfortable speaking freely in the last few weeks than I did in the last 4 years. I'm
And
just gonna say
see,
that. Like I just think
and
that's culturally an interesting thing.
and why? Can I ask you why? Like, what has been the difference? Forgetting like what has actually taken place that makes you more comfortable speaking?
I believe it's the fact that I see so many more people on the internet speaking more candidly and just
Yeah.
with a lot more, you know, a lot less fear of like what their opinions would do to implicate them in the future. I think the reason for it is like if you have somebody like President Trump who was able to say everything under the sun and still be elected at the highest official level, then it's like, okay, what I say maybe doesn't have that much, like I don't have to overthink it that much, right? I don't know if that makes sense, Bridget. So I get why you're asking the question because it actually is a nefarious reason as to why I feel this way. But I do feel this way, and I think it's a benefit to the country that hopefully other people feel that way too. And I would
Okay,
love to
but
know if
this
people
is
do.
just a minute. This is not a topic. This is not an episode about Trump in particular. This is more the broader issue of
Right.
how do we associate politics and corruption.
So
For
what
And
about
example,
and
other
also,
levels of
well,
politics,
I
like
also
senators and congressmen?
yeah,
I
what about that?
there's
When you think of a congressman, do you think, I'm sure he's corrupt? Do you think that?
I don't.
Or an Indian, how about an Indian Lok Sabha representative, Rajya Sabha representative? How about
I
those
think what I think when I think about local representatives is I think I don't know what they do. That's truthfully,
Yeah,
that's what
I
I
agree.
think. I think I just, in the same vein of like, okay, when I think about a tech company, I can, if you give me the position name, I know exactly to what extent what they're doing is. Or like a finance company, if you tell me what their like range of responsibilities are, I'm like, I can gauge what kind of work they do. With
things?
politics, especially at these like middle stages of politicians, I don't know even what Vivek Ramaswamy is doing, like
Well, he's
whatever
not
he's
elected right now to anything.
yeah,
but
but I
Just
just don't
when
even know. I just don't even know
yeah, but
what he
let's
does.
forget him because he's not elected. But there are like hundreds and thousands of elected representatives, right? That I know this that my whole life in whether India or America, I knew one thing. If you were a business who could get a government contract, your life was made because you would be plugged into an IV drip of money that nobody will ask any questions about. And I believe that in India, I believe that in America. Shalab, you know what I'm
Wow.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
if you got
Can
a
you give an
government contract,
example?
yeah, if you got a government contract to fix the roads of this town, whichever town, whether it was in India or in America, we used to applaud if we knew anybody who got that type of contract, even to fix the little side streets. We all were like, oh my god, there's your next billionaire, because government spending historically has been associated with unchecked, unfettered, endless amount of money, because tax money keeps pouring into it. Nobody actually knows where it's going. There is no real accountability. It's not like, I mean, speak for New York. I think JFK and LaGuardia Airport have been under construction for the entire 20 something years we've lived in New York. Literally, the entire 20 something. Nobody seems to even ever check and say, when will this ever be done? But
Right.
somebody is funding that constant construction. That money is coming from somewhere. And some company that has the contract to do all that is benefiting from it. I don't even know who's in charge of it. I don't know. So
so
I do know that my whole life I was
there,
told, if you can get a government contract to do anything, your life will be made.
I agree. There's a lack of accountability. That is the biggest thing. There's a lack of it. Who do we hold accountable to this LaGuardia issue, right? Like, and that is the biggest thing.
So what this all is block grants, right? It's grants that the government issues towards corporations saying, we will give you this amount of money. We hope it'll make your service much better, which then will in turn make the public much easier for using it and make the public better, the people better, right? So the other type of grant that the government can issue is called categorical grants. And the way categorical grants work is they basically say, okay, LaGuardia Airport, we're going to give you $1 million. You are only to use this $1 million on making sure you have enough restaurants. You can only use this $1 million to make sure your escalators aren't broken down and your conveyor belts all work perfectly. That is the only thing you can do with this $1 million. And it's only
Rich,
been
no one seems to ever check. Like, who
How
is
do you know
checking
so much
up on
about
these
this?
grants?
Do you learn this in college or in high school?
Well, I learned that specifically in high school. I think politics as a person I'm very passionate about. I could definitely see myself running for a higher position like later in
No,
life.
oh my God,
100%.
no, Bridge. I won't learn.
Bridge, I see that for you. I totally see
I'm
that for
very
you.
No.
And wait,
That's the
and
other thing. I would never let any of you enter
hold on.
politics. The dirtiest business on earth, and it's so dangerous. People are out to kill and
But
get
Zoya
killed. I
was a
would
school
never.
president.
Hold
Come
on.
on.
No.
Hold on. And
I
Bridge
was
was
against that
captain of
too,
all
by
the.
the way, school
She
president.
was very against that. She was
I was
very
very
against.
against it.
And
I
we can
fought
we
her.
can we can get into that in a second. But like, okay, first of all, Bridge has autonomy to decide what he wants
No,
to
he
do,
does not.
obviously. But one
No.
thing that I really actually appreciate that about what you just said, Bridge, and I am very grateful that this is changing. I don't think that it's fair that this idea that you had to study like a very significant humanities, like you had to be a humanities major essentially in order to run for the government, like, or do some sort of presidential bid, or like, I think it's really important to be very informed on American politics, on politics at large. But like, this idea that like computer scientists aren't able to think about the government because the brain is just so different. I'm so glad that's changing, honestly. Like, I don't agree that the only people that are capable of making leadership decisions are people who have studied one sector of academia. Like Bridge is getting a computer science degree at Cornell, right? Like, and if he does choose to run for some elected official, that I'm glad that that's normalized, right? Like that
No.
brings a different
No.
perspective into the government.
Over my dead body. No
Okay.
one in this family is going to enter politics over my dead body. It is a dirty, filthy business. People get killed all the time. I will not let my kids be
So
involved. And I'm telling
so
you
I
that
would
right now.
I would hear you say that and challenge you to change your perspective and say, because it's such a like dirty institution, maybe you should try and enter it to try and clean it, make it cleaner, make it
No.
more efficient, which is kind of
No,
similar to
thank
what's
you.
going on with Doge.
No, thank you. It is not cleanable. It is not cleanable. There is too much power. There is too much money. And there are some things we are very, very, very good at, many, many things. And there's some things we're going to stay away from. And I'm
But can
telling
you
you,
explain
Bridge,
what
right
Doge
now.
does?
Bridge, I'm telling you right now, look, watch the kill that dream right now.
Can you explain what Doge does?
Yeah, Doge is a brand new subsidiary.
I know what it is. It's a branch of the government, right?
No.
Yes, and
It's
what
not a
does it
branch.
do?
No, it's
no,
not. It's
it's
not a branch of the
unofficial.
government.
It's unofficial. It's
a
unofficial.
department of the government.
It's not
Of the
unofficially
That's
a
what I
branch though. It's a department. That's a very big. Okay, Vera, do you know what the three branches of government are?
Yeah, it's legislative, executive, and judicial, right?
Wow.
Yes.
First of all,
Very
good
impressive.
job. And second of all, every student in America should know what the three branches of government are. Everyone should know what the government is and how your government works. And two, what Doge is, which Didi kind of already explained perfectly, is they're basically taking a bunch of bureaucrats, which are organizations that work for the government with government spending, and Doge is saying, you're a dumb idea, I'm killing you, and you're not getting any more funding. That is basically the essential of what Doge is doing.
The best way to describe this, oh my gosh, I have such a great metaphor. So like, okay, in a marriage between like dad and mom, right? Like the idea is that like instead of dad or like mom having all the executive decision making power, it's like giving Zoya the opportunity to like get into the financial documents and be like, oh, like we can do this better, we can do this better, we can do this better because I'm younger and have fresh perspective on things and a different skill set than mom and dad. That is if I was
Just so
Doge
you
and they
know,
were the government.
that'll never happen.
Right.
And
But like, I'm just saying that's what
just to
it
add on
is.
to your metaphor, to make it a little bit more clear, is it would also be as if mom and dad are worried so much about finance and so many different things when it comes to leading this family. They don't have time to worry about like what we eat, for example. So maybe they delegate Didi to control the amount of food that we eat and make sure the food is proper that we're eating. And then Doge is
Yeah.
saying, we don't need a branch for that. That's irrelevant. You're not getting money. Or if you are getting money, we're going to cut your money in half because you're spending too much money doing that. It's not that hard of a task. Right? That is what
Right.
essentially the government is based off of. But I want to pivot the
And this is
conversation a little bit because I think it's much more important. And actually, I want to bring in a different piece of outside context to this too, is the way people speak about politics and the way families talk about politics, right? We all are having a family conversation about politics, which is really fun. Obviously, I'm very passionate about it. I know everyone else in this family is passionate about it too. But one thing that we do very well, which most families don't, is get mad at each other, right? And when I challenge mom's perspective on the government, she's not screaming at me and saying that's such a stupid idea. You either get in line or get out of this family. She's saying, okay, I understand. I disagree, but I understand. And actually, one viewer of the podcast commented on the last episode, DM'd me about what she thought about something I said. And we got into a very lengthy DM conversation about like the government and what we think about it right now. And we had a very respectful conversation where we both took out more than we like gave in, which is obviously what you want and what you need within political conversations. So now my question is to the family is, how do you think that more families can get used to this, right? If you grow up your whole life falling in line and without any sort of other perspective, you're going to perpetuate that amongst your kids. And then they're going to do that with their kids. Like, how do you break that process? What would you tell a family like to like think about instead of just getting upset with each other?
I would advise everybody. I actually like the whole falling in line thing. So I would advise all the parents to scare the shit out of their kids.
okay,
And they should
right.
believe whatever the parents believe. That's it. I mean, the parents have done all
Okay.
the thinking. Why are you wasting your time
Okay,
like
that was
reinventing the wheel in your mind? And you don't know anything anyway. The kids don't know anything anyway. They're not making any money. They're not paying any taxes. So just believe what your parents are saying.
that was a very scary dog response, but like a more sincere response that I actually do believe is true in our family is like I do think we have a lot of mutual respect for the fact that we're all learning about all of this together, and that none of us know everything, but together we can like build a better opinion and more informed opinion. I also think the way that we talk about these topics is very like scientific. It's like who has the most evidence to suggest one opinion or one claim, and best objective view wins, right? Like it's not like anybody's getting emotional about it. It's like Bridge will make a claim. I'll be like, what's your evidence? He'll suggest his evidence. If I have counter evidence, we'll counter the evidence. But there's never something super like I'm a woman and this is like you're encroaching on my territory about like talking about abortion rights because I'm a woman and you're a man, right? Like if Bridge had a view on abortion, I would welcome it, especially if he had perspective on it that was different than mine. And I think that just comes from a lot of mutual respect for one another, and just like a very meritocratic way of thinking about arguments.
I would say, Bridge, I agree, Zoya, and I would say, Bridge, the answer to your question in honesty and earnest is that, first of all, families just have to start making time. Like what we do for this podcast, and by the way, we're doing it all in different parts of the world that we're in right now. I think every family should have a weekly Zoom, no matter where they live, and just be like talk about whatever is on everybody's mind, because this digital format actually forces you to listen and focus on what somebody is saying. I think a lot of what happens is that families hang around each other and they're in the same room together. So they think they're together, but no one's actually focused on what the other person is saying or thinking. They're just coexisting and floating around in the same space. So I'm a big proponent. I've been telling my friends that they should all have weekly Zooms with their families, like even their kids, even if they live in the same house. Like we sometimes says things in these podcasts that are shocking to me, and we live in the same house. Uh, and I think the second thing is that if you're having a heated discussion and like you feel the temperature rising, one easy way to at least put a pause on it exploding is to just walk away for 5 minutes. Like just walk away. Oh, okay, Zoya. Okay, Zoya. Whatever.
I
Yeah,
also want to
Bridge.
say that to that point that that happens even in our family, which we present to be like very respectful to each other. I would say almost half the conversations I have with every member gets heated at some point, or at some point
So
someone gets
heated.
emotional. Like that always happens. That's like very
So
natural in an
heated.
argument. And at that point, that's when you realize the argument isn't worth fighting anymore. Actually, I was just listening to this like 10 things that Mother Teresa said about humility. And she was very like proponent on the fact
Mhm.
that if you're having an argument, you really have to think about the fact, what is, if in best case scenario, what do you get out of this argument and what do they get out of this argument? For like, if we're arguing about something stupid about, me messing up Veer's room, what do we get out of this argument? It's just he gets
No,
upset, I get
no.
upset,
Okay,
and
so
then
I
and
see
then
what
we
you're
really
trying to
don't
do. I
derive
see what you're
anything.
trying to do now. You're trying to make it seem like my argument was just useless, and that I shouldn't have been arguing with you
Okay,
for doing
I
such
was
a bad
joking a
thing.
little about that. I was joking about that, but my main point does stand. Is if you're getting an argument with your friend, which at college has been the most thing I think I've realized, is that I argue with my friends all the time about every single thing. It'll just be, how should your resume be formatted? Argument. Where should we go to eat? Argument. How do you apply to this club? Argument. What is the stronger thing to put on your resume? Argument, right? But the real thing is, nothing's going to come out of that. I'm going to leave with my opinion. He's going to leave with his opinion. And then we're just going to end up just being more upset than we were before. So it's just small things like that, but you really have to think about. And I will say that we live in the age of where creating your own opinions and learning about politics is become impossible. It is just genuinely almost virtually impossible to have a really informed opinion on any sort of topic because of how bad
I
media has gotten
agree.
with this. Like
I
you see, for
agree.
example, Kanye posting the most insane things on Twitter I've ever seen,
Bro.
and it's just and then but kids are gonna leave and see that and think, oh my god, I love his music. What he does is smart. Maybe he's right, and that's obviously just.
Yeah.
So a lot of what he says is just extremely disrespectful and not true. But what I found, the reason I brought that up is because I want to share one thing that I found to really battle that and really give me a good evidence for a lot of the things I claim. And I've really started listening to podcasts recently, and I really find that some podcasts, when they're like professionally done and the people who are speaking, you have to do research on them. Hopefully they're very smart and you try to be unbiased as possible. Through watching those podcasts, I felt I learned so much more about politics than scrolling on any sort of media platform or even reading the New York Times, honestly. Reading the New York Times, watching Fox News. I feel like just listening to two people speak about the topic really provides me a lot more perspective. So that's
Is
my
there
piece
a
of advice.
favorite podcast you want to plug? Is there like
Sure.
a favorite
I
one?
really, really enjoyed the Daily Brew. It's a New
The Daily
York-based
Brew.
podcast. It's really, again, as humans do, it gets a little biased at some points. You have to be cautious about that. But again, I really do like the information they present. They tell you everything in the news, what their opinions on it. I'm from New York, so I especially resonate with some of the things they say. But yeah, that's my one podcast I've been listening to a lot. And Bloomberg Tech. I really like Bloomberg Tech a lot.
Okay.
That's awesome, Bridge.
Yeah. We also do a podcast, just putting in a plug for our own family podcast. Excellent way to learn
Mom,
about different
what?
is
And a
the
new one
podcast we are
coming.
watching right now.
Oh yeah.
And a new one coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and there is a new podcast about to enter the podcasting world. We are going to tell you all about it next week. Yes, we have a spin off. We have our first podcast spin off coming, and we're not going to, we are
And there
not
might
going
be a
to.
second coming soon, by the way, just to
Yeah,
give you guys a
oh,
little
really?
sneak peek. Yeah.
Oh my
But
God. Okay.
for now,
Comment down
let's
below
stick
if
to
you guys
the.
want the Veer podcast.
Okay,
I know
coming
he's trying to
down.
watch that.
The Veer podcast would actually go crazy. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
listen, let's have some final thoughts on the issue of politics and corruption. We all agree that none of us will ever enter politics, so that's done.
How did you all agree?
We
I
Can
really just
agree.
we?
don't get where this comes
Anytime.
from.
Anytime. There are so many key things that she says, but when she says, as we all agree, or now that we have all agreed, anything that has anything to do
I
with
think that's
agreement.
how our LA producers talk. So now she started using that same language.
No, it's the
She's
opposite.
been
She'll
doing
say
this
it
since
to
like
them.
literally.
Yeah, she's been doing this pre like famousness, like way pre.
Okay, anyway, we agree that there is a lot of corruption in politics. We agree that there is a lot of room for growth and improvement, which we encourage other people's families and kids to be engaged in. And I would like to know what our fan base thinks about these topics. How do they talk to their family members about politics? It's so heated that even husband and wife get into fights. Father and daughter, father and son, mother gets into no fight with anybody. But I just want to know how other people are handling it. And as we end every episode with a round of good grades with Gargs, where each Garg assigns another Garg with an A grade for the winning moment in the podcast, so too I would like to know who gets the good grades from which Garg in this round. Let's go. Who wants to go first?
I
I
want to
will
go
give my
first.
A grade to Bridge.
Mm.
I thought he spoke very intelligently about a variety of different topics. including but not limited to the favorite podcast you talked about. So my A grade goes to Bridge.
Okay.
I'm gonna give my A plus grade to Baya because the way, like, your opinions are very unbiased, and in the past, like, the way that you've changed my perspective on things is very interesting. And like sometimes, like when copies happen, I tend to think that the smaller brand is copying the bigger one, and like he brings it into my perspective that, like, what if the bigger brand copied the smaller one? And I've been thinking about that recently. I thought it was really interesting.
Mm.
I also want to give my A grade to Bridge,
Wow.
specifically because, yeah, I think Bridge might have a clean sweep on this one, but I think Bridge, specifically, like, I think one thing that Bridge does really well is he has always participated in political conversations,
Yeah.
even when he had to say, like, even when it got really heated with like friends or family members, he participated. And when he didn't know, he would just say, I don't know about that. What I do know is this, or what I do understand is that. And I think that's something that we should all learn from, like as young kids. You don't learn from not participating, and you don't gain anything by, like, there's no perfect, you're never going to know everything. There's no perfect absorption of all the material of political thought in the world. Even the best historians are still having to have these conversations to figure out what they don't understand. So the worst thing you
Zoya,
can
the
do
one
is
thing
not
we didn't talk
participate.
about, and I wish we had, is how has politics changed from, the time of Latin, which I know you're an expert on, to
That
today.
we can definitely have a
Also,
conversation
we
about.
should
And
have
if
a
anybody's,
specific conversation just about Didi's political adventure throughout life too, because she
Yeah.
has like very much been very like swaying
Like,
in
how was
life
politics
throughout
like
life.
under
Okay.
Caesar?
Okay. We are
Okay,
doing
okay,
grades right now. Zoya,
okay.
are you done assigning your grade?
oh my
Yes.
God,
I
yes,
see what the people
hyena.
are saying about people being like,
Who's left? Bridge, do you have a grade to assign?
Yeah. I would like to give my A grade to Veer because I think a lot, especially since I've gone to college, I think mom has had a big like influence on you, and I think sometimes she pushes a little bit too much to put opinion on you. But I think that like you've been very open to understanding both perspectives and not just taking, face value what mom is telling you and might not be the correct idea or like a fully informed idea.
That felt like shade towards mom somehow. And it is not really becoming of the person who's leading and about to get the first ever guard sweep of A grades, because I am
Yeah.
also going to assign my A grade to my older son, Bridge, but not for the reason these guys mentioned, because there is not much a lot of depth of analysis there.
Oh my God.
The
Oh
real reason,
my God.
the real reason he deserves this A grade is this: in spite of being an almost pre-med student, in spite of being an A plus student in biology, anatomy, and computer science, which he just got a
he
99.
is not
Like,
an A plus student in biology.
Bro,
He
he
almost
got
failed.
a
Yeah, bro,
He
99
almost
in
failed
his
biology in
assignment
high school.
yesterday.
he
In
almost failed
spite of
biology at
the
Cornell.
heaviness of STEM pouring out of him, he makes time for the humanities. He makes time for political consciences. And for that reason, my son Bridge gets the A grade today, which nobody else picked up on in this family. And it's fine, because a big part of leadership is learning to work with people who are not as capable as you. But as we learn so much about politics, corruption, and what we think about everything, we would love to hear what you think on these topics, who you assign the A grade to, how do you talk about these topics in your household. We would love to have you bring friends into our podcasting universe. We are going to grow and grow and grow. As we hinted, hint, hint, we have a first podcast spin-off about to launch next week. You're going to hear about it. You're going to love it. It's going to serve you in a whole
It'll be
different
aired by
way.
the time this episode comes out.
Yes, and we are so excited that you're a part of our journey. Please bring your friends, like, share, and subscribe our episodes, and can't wait to see you again. Thank you, everybody. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye.